Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer Monday afternoon debrief with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Craig Nisbet to take a look back over Hibs' 3-2 defeat to Dundee United at Tannadice, a result that leaves Hibs unfortunately rooted to the bottom of the Scottish Premiership, but the scoreline doesn't it doesn't tell half the story of what we witnessed on Tayside on Saturday. So first things first, Craig, thanks as always for joining us. How are you getting on? Are you just about over that from the weekend, or I'd imagine it's probably still stinging?
Yeah, still stings quite a lot. It's a real tough one to take. But I always feel that this is quite cathartic when I get on to talk about it. So hopefully this will make me feel a little bit better.
Well, I hope we have that. It has that effect for everybody that's tuning in today. Just a slightly sort of new format for us today, or maybe just a continuation of what we've been trying to do over the past couple of weeks, just introducing some more sort of multimedia, and visual elements, because obviously a lot of what we talk about on this Monday show is events that as they happened on the pitch. So it's just to give a bit more background and a bit, as I said, a bit more of a visual representation of that. We hope you can enjoy that edition. For folk who maybe listen to this as a podcast after the fact, we will endeavour to still describe everything as we go through it. But it's just a slightly new format for us, and I suppose with so many incidents to comb over from this game, there was probably no better time to really kind of heavily introduce it. But just first of all, a word for our sponsors. Good Vibe Giveaways are proud to sponsor the Hibs Observer and offer fantastic prizes to fans of the club. Prizes change weekly and include tech, gadgets, days out, weekends away, tax-free cash, and even Oasis tickets. So get your tickets now at www.goodvibesgiveaways.com and enter for your chance to spread the good vibes. The irony of talking about giveaways as it happens to this game is not lost on us. Unfortunately, not a lot of good vibes to follow in the next however long we manage to make out of this today. So I'm just going to kick off, can you sum up that in 3 words?
Same old mistakes.
Yeah, I think so. I think that pretty much covers it. We could probably just chuck it now, to be honest, and save everybody the hassle, the pain of going through these goals. But I mean, it was kind of one of those a really inexplicable collapse from Hibs, unfortunately. And it was one that did feel a wee bit inevitable for the moment that Joe Newell got sent off. So we'll get through all that. We'll get through the goals, the red card incident, everything in between. But I mean, just if we go right back to even before kickoff, and we look at Hibs' setup. So we expected that there was going to be changes from the Motherwell game. We were all a wee bit surprised that David Gray stuck with the same team. I mean, what was your immediate thoughts on the lineup? Did you feel it was a bit more suited to this type of game? Did you have any reservations? Anything else you'd like to have seen?
No, I think with obviously Tannadice being suspended, Newell coming back in made a huge amount of sense. It was obviously good to see Rudy starting as well. I think probably the only is just that right-hand side. You know, I think Miller and Cadden are very, very similar. I just don't think that's quite working out on the right-hand side for the moment. And I think it probably seen again in the first half on Saturday where there just wasn't much coming from that side, and you can see how much we're kind of heavily relying on Obita for deliveries and for a bit of creativity. So I think it's just that right-hand side. What I will say, though, is obviously Boyle was back on the bench. Probably the intention was to give him a half, which they did. And you could see there was a real difference when he came on. But yeah, when we're starting with Miller and Cadden, you know, when it was away to Rangers, kind of understood that as a setup. But it does lack a wee bit of creativity, I think, in that side.
Yeah, I think you'd imagine Boyle he'll be taking that position back moving forward. He was maybe just not quite ready to start the game at the weekend. So, I mean, before we get into the goals, the various incidents, just a bit, first of all, about Hibs' general setup and how they approach the game. Obviously, they had quite a lot of possession in the early stages, even though they fell behind to that goal. I mean, what did you make of the overall game plan, the approach?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously when Dundee United, with their back three, sort of midfield four, almost like a 3-4-2-1, and Middleton and Thompson kind of tucking in.
Mhm.
It was I thought we found it hard to break them down. I think that was always going to be the case. I think teams are kind of leaving us with the ball a little bit and have it. And I think because we push the fullbacks high up the pitch, as you can see there, where Beta getting on the ball, even though Kwon and Newell tend to sit back beside Ekpiteta and O'Hora, we are susceptible to counter-attacks, which we'll get to with the first goal. But yeah, I think what we were trying to do really is we were working the ball left to right, and you can see here then Hoylett, in this clip, for example, here is just trying to make that run in behind to stretch things a little bit. One, to try and get the ball down that side, or leave a space for maybe Rudy or Kukurevich to drop in and try and get in possession. But I felt that we were just moving the ball a little bit slow at times. And I think that contributed to make things a bit easier for Dundee United.
Yeah, I mean, you can see here kind of Rudy Milotnikov moving into that wee pocket at times, and then as you see here, kind of moving the fullbacks up. But I mean, it was a tough shift for young Rudy in there, I thought, especially in that first half. I think it was at Kevin Holt, they were getting really tight to him, and I feel a couple of times he just got clattered in that first half, didn't he?
He gets clattered in this one. It's not the greatest ball in from Miller, and he just sort of loses control and it goes out for a throw in. And to be fair, at the start of games, 7.5 minutes in, there is going to be an element of that where you're just trying to open the game up, you're stretching, you're making runs in behind and all these different sort of types of movements just to try and create a little bit of space. But certainly we were just kind of caught in this U shape, kind of going round, and it was quite hard to get the ball in and make it stick in that kind of final part of the pitch. But yeah, probably very at the start of the second half, you could probably see it a little bit better just in terms of you've got Cadden on the far right there. You've obviously got Newell and Kwon in the middle, and then highlighted, obviously, you can just see Martin Boyle just in the top sort of left-hand side of the screen. And that was really us in our sort of 4-2-3-1. And as we're trying to move the ball there, we're obviously then trying to move it forward. And actually what happens in this clip here, the ball goes into Beta. He's actually just about to pop it for Newell. And if you go to the next image, Newell plays it round the corner first time, and that's actually Rudy who gets on the ball there in the left-hand side. Him and Hoylett have just switched, and then you can sort of see that front three, and you can see that we've sort of kind of breached Dundee United a little bit there. We've got in behind, and you can see we've got players kind of between the lines, but again, that you can see on the clock there, that happened sort of, just into the second half. And unfortunately, we just struggled to do that in the first half.
You can see that the runs afterwards, Rudy coming inside.
And Rudy comes inside there, and it's good. Kukurevich actually runs down into the corner. He made a lot of those runs in the game. Doesn't always get the ball, obviously. Ball gets turned over, and it can be quite a thankless task, which I sort of said in my article last week about doing that running. But I wanted to highlight that because later on, when we get to our second goal, that actually comes from a Kukurevich running behind and Jordan Obita supporting. So there is like fragments and little elements of what we're trying to do, and you can see it coming through at times, but it's just really few and far between. And I've just highlighted Cadden again on the far side because you can see again he's moving to go forward in this time, and we've got obviously Hoylett and Boyle and Kukurevich going in behind.
Yeah, I mean, that was before we get to the first goal, actually. There was that change at half-time, and then obviously a couple of minutes later, there was the change of shape with Chris Cadden going off. I mean, where do you think is better for young Rudy Milotnikov at this moment? I mean, he started in that number 10 role, but then there was the switch at half-time, moving him back out to the left-hand side with Junior Hoylett going in. I mean, those really kind of promising performances when he first came into the team over the summer. He did do a lot of good work from that left-hand side.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think with Hoylett and him, there's probably a lot of scope to rotate during the game. I think because of the impact Obita's having on that side, I think I can see why David Gray wants to put Hoylett out there as well. And you've kind of got two really sort of creative players. Teams will know that they have to put pressure on Obita because of his deliveries and the chances he's creating. So that should maybe free up a bit of space for Hoylett to then make a run in behind or come inside. So I can see why Hoylett's getting the nod there. But I think for Rudy, it is really difficult to play in that number 10 role, especially being so young. And actually, he had lots of good moments. He had little moments where he's got his body position great against the defender. He rolls him down the left-hand side. But being young, there's obviously these moments where he just takes one too many touches and the ball gets turned over. And as we've seen, we're really susceptible to counter-attacks. So I think there's quite a lot of pressure on him, and he's probably putting a lot of pressure on himself. But yeah, I think a little rotation between him and Hoylett might help going forward.
Yeah, so just moving on to that first goal, I think it was actually Molotnikov. I think he did give the ball away just before that, but I mean, it's in Dundee United's half. There's an awful lot that needs to happen before then, and then is it kind of alarming how easily then Dundee United managed to get from there to basically Hibs' byline, 6-yard line. It was.
Yeah, it's a ball in from Kwon, plays it into Molotnikov. It's an okay pass, and I think it really just stretches a little bit and just gets the ball turned over. You can see he's actually the player closest to Lewis Miller, who's highlighted there in terms of running back. And I think if you go to the next image, because here we're not too bad a position, and actually I've kind of tried to magnify Lewis Miller a little bit, because obviously you can see that Middleton's outside the pitch at this point and Miller's getting his arm across, and when you freeze it there, he's doing all the right things. You're just waiting for it. What I was expecting him to do in typical Lewis Miller fashion was to get his body across, slow right down and just fall over and try and get the free kick, because that's what he does time and time again. And he gets his arm out here across, and then he just doesn't make any contact with Middleton, and then just loses the foot race. And it was actually quite odd to see him lose that foot race, because he's some of his best performances, he's been up against Maeda and other players like that, and his recovery pace has always been a real strength for him, a real positive. I don't know if it was the games for Australia, the travel, the fatigue. I don't really know, but it was quite a surprise to see him.
He did look jaded, didn't he? I thought, and then obviously he gets taken off at half time. So there's obviously something David Gray's seen there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and I highlighted, I mean, this might be harsh on Kwon here as well, but I think for a holding midfielder, you've obviously can see Molotnikov in that sprint position getting back, and I just feel like Kwon there could have put a bit more in to get back in. He might have made no difference there, but I just, that's kind of something I've noticed with Kwon a little bit, in that defensive side of things is not quite as sharp as he could be in terms of in the danger. And I just think, again, having an extra body in there, it may have helped block the cross, or at least give Middleton something else to consider.
Because there is a lot, as you say, like Molotnikov's kind of overtaking him there, and that's your holding midfielder in the middle of the park. You've highlighted, you're thinking, just get yourself back in. You might not actually, nobody's expecting him to at least maybe sort of completely catch up with Middleton at this point, but I mean, another body in there just closing off that space, just giving.
And if he makes that straight line run that I've highlighted there, by the time Middleton curves all the way around and almost gets just in close to the 6-yard box, if Kwon makes that run all the way back, it's just an extra body. If Middleton sees him in his peripheral vision, he might think, I need to take this cross early, I need to turn back. But he gets clear of Miller, and then there's nobody there.
I think because from there look where sort of Kwon is at that point.
Kwon's just he's beside the referee. Rudy's just obviously coming into the edge of the box, and it's highlighted O'Hora here, because you can see he's sort of looking at the ball, and Dalby's just kind of peeled off the back of him. It actually happens. I've not got it in the images, but it happens for the disallowed goal in the start of the second half as well. O'Hora just sort of takes his eye off him, and Dalby just pulls off him. So, and again, obviously he gets into this position, and actually if you go to the next one, because I've highlighted that little space in front of Ekpiteta there. That ball he plays is perfect in terms of it just gets fired right across. You can see Dalby's kind of got off the back of O'Hora at that point. I don't know if I'm being extra harsh on Ekpiteta in terms of saying get right in front of that.
I don't think you are, to be honest, because I think if you take it back to here and then where Middleton ends up, that's the only pass he can play at that point. There's
there's nobody else in the box, basically.
There's nobody else in the box. Miller's got close enough to him. The cutback probably isn't really an option. So I think there for Ekpiteta, it's small margins, small distances, but there is nothing else that Middleton can aim for there, really, is there?
No, and actually, I think, and again, it's not clipped, but in the highlights, people remember like a sort of similar play happens not too long after, and this time Ekpiteta does get in and sort of throws himself, blocks it just at the sort of the corner of the 6-yard box. So it's just a really disappointing goal to lose because, like as you said, you've got, if you look at all the Hibs players, look how many players we've got in and around that area, and for 2 players to carve out a chance and a goal from that's just not good enough, is it?
Yeah, aye. As I said, it's the only pass that Middleton has on. It's his only option, and he still manages to squeeze it through. So again, yeah, not great from Hibs' perspective. But I suppose you need to we need to then look at the response after that. It was a kind of sore one to take. I don't feel I created an awful lot afterwards, but I mean it's a good set piece goal when it comes. Did it look like a pre-rehearsed thing to you?
I think so. Yeah, I just wanted to it was a really good delivery from Joe Newell. I mean, it's if we're being like kind of really critical, it's awful defending from Dundee United. I don't know who was picking up Miller, but he gets really caught underneath the ball and sort of loses his bearings a little bit. But the reason I've highlighted it is that I thought our set pieces in general, you can see there's been a real effort in terms of free kicks and corners to try and come up with something different and different routines. It's not the time or place to talk about these long throws that we keep doing, but you can see here you've got Ekpiteta and Miller, who are clearly the 2 targets at the back post, which makes sense. I think Marv set up Kurevic's goal against St Johnstone, if I remember rightly, from the back post. And obviously a danger in the air, we know Miller is as well. And then it's just good to see that we've got those bodies in and around the box all, attacking the ball and going towards it as well. I think it's actually Kurevic and the far side who's going in, and it's a good header and at the back post. So I actually think as well from the stats as well, it was our set pieces that seemed to be our most dangerous way of scoring in terms of compared to our open play expected goals, I think. So maybe a very small positive, but something that's kind of going in the right direction for us.
Yeah, well, we've talked before about the sort of, Hibs are literally, quite literally a bigger side this season. There's been a lot of big, physical players being added to that. So, I mean, it's sensible to try and utilise guys like Miller in those situations, because that's where he can be dangerous. As I said, we could probably dedicate a whole episode to the long throws at some point. But just in terms of stuff like that, I mean, it's not, as we can see there, it's a ball kind of over to the back post. Miller peels away, heads it back across, and it's a goal. It's not, reinventing the wheel in terms of set pieces, but it's maximising what you do have in those areas. And something probably didn't see a lot of last season. I suppose it's maybe, people are not going to take it as such a positive when things from open play aren't maybe working out quite as well. But I mean, in terms of having another weapon or another avenue to attack, it is certainly something to build on for Hibs. And then we'll get to the second goal shortly, but just there was a change of shape shortly after half time. I mean, that was complete. That was sod's law, taking your right back off, moving the right winger back to right back, and then said right winger gets injured when there's no other sort of right backs on the bench, and that prompted a change of shape, didn't it?
Yeah, and we sort of went into like a sort of 3. Iredale obviously came on, went to a back 3 with Ekpiteta and O'Hora, and then a sort of 4 across the middle. Obita, obviously keeping Kwon and Newell in there, Boyle onto the right-hand side, and then sort of like Rudy and Hoylett just playing sort of in behind Kurevic with a bit more freedom. And I actually sort of felt that worked quite well for us. I sort of felt it, we were a bit more sturdier at the back. Like I think, Iredale came in and had some, if getting thrown in like that probably wasn't the easiest thing, but, won the ball, was playing it forward, and obviously then having Obita high and wide already makes a huge difference, and the same for Boyle on the other side. And and you're right, it was total sod's law from that going off, and that just I think he got injured actually at the disallowed goal when Middleton kind of went past and crossed it in. So, but yeah, I think that shape suited us to a certain extent, and obviously it leads into this second goal. Obviously, we made one more change after that with Dwight Gale coming on. But you can see, like I clipped in the earlier part there, this is Kurevich again making those runs in behind, and I think you can then see it's Gale sort of just in at the sort of third Dundee United defender there. I think having him on makes a massive difference for Kurevich, because he makes these runs all game. You know, if he's up front on his own, he makes them all the time, but quite often he's then knocking the ball back out to a winger or to a fullback, and then he's not in the box.
Yeah, I suppose he can't be two places at once, can he?
No, and you maybe look for more for Molotnikov to do that, or maybe Hoylett and things like that, but it's very difficult.
But I suppose then having somebody whose natural instinct is to do that, rather than trying to coax it into guys who would rather come to the ball and look for the ball to feet, makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, Hoylett isn't going to run in behind. He can do it, but it's not going to be a key strength of his. And Molotnikov, again, he's still finding his feet in that role. So, yes, he does make those runs in behind, but he also comes looking for feet as well. So it's still a bit of a puzzle, I think, for David Gray to work out how to get that. And I do think we're quite a lot of square pegs and round holes, this team. So every time you kind of start building a Hibs team you think will work formation wise, you're going, but that doesn't suit this player, and having to change him. And I do think that's it's obviously an issue with recruitment.
And then this is where you want a bit to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible delivery. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm sure Dundee United will be frustrated with the amount of space he's got, but even then, the whip he puts on it, and I tried to recreate it with the red arrow as best I could. it does sort of go in towards the keeper. The keeper does step out, but then steps back. Hoylett makes a little run, I think, just across the sort of near post, and it's a good striker's header from Gale down into the ground and into the top corner.
Yeah, I wrote a wee bit about this in the our sort of match report afterwards, like after I'd had to completely tear up the original version with Hibs leading 2-1 at 85 minutes. It's an absolute journalist nightmare, that scenario. But I kept in a bit about Gale, and I mean, just trying to sort of glean some positives from it. I think that second half there is probably a snapshot of why he's been brought in, isn't it? He's maybe not a guy. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. The more David Gray looks for a winning formula, but I think on the idea with him coming in would be perhaps not to play every single game, but he's a guy that you feel that you could probably rely on to provide in these finely balanced games. To come up with moments like that. So I suppose that was some sort of positive to take away.
Yeah, and I actually thought he showed, like, he sort of there was a moment again, and maybe it was just after he scored, but he sort of, I think he lost the ball and then he chased all the way back, sank out onto the left hand side and won the ball. Like, he looks to me like quite fit, quite able to press and go. I mean, it'll be very different if he was to start a game, for example. It might be a different story, but certainly just the difference of having another body in the box there and someone who can finish in and around the 6-yard box is beneficial. And I think the big question will be for Gray is, can I get him and Kurevich in the side together, or am I going to have to keep going one for the other?
But he can't be far. I mean, either way, I don't. You could really make a case for Gale not being far away from a start at this point, couldn't you? Because he's come on and made an impact where others haven't.
I think so, and he looks like he's got again he doesn't have bags of pace to run in behind, and you can't ask him to do that all game. And again, you certainly don't want him to be doing that, because you want him in and around that exact position he is there, like in between the posts, in between centre halves. Like, you don't want him running the channels. But again, if you were setting up the team and you had players in behind him, maybe in a sort of similar setup in that kind of sort of 3-4-2-1, and those two players were willing to make those runs in behind, then I think, he's definitely worthy of a start and would definitely contribute in those areas.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, everything looked, fairly rosy at that point. But then the big turning point, obviously, is Jonio's red card. The first one, although he's not made any contact with Glenn Middleton for that first booking, he's still stopping the attack. Really, isn't he? Did you think that was worthy of a booking? Did you see it differently? I know David Gray, I don't think particularly agreed with that one.
I think Stevenson had a couple for them in the first half that, he racked up maybe 2 or 3 fouls, never got a book in. Obviously, they then go on the counter attack, and it's one of them. It's probably not in terms of like there's no actual contact really made and things like that. But nowadays you just can't go flying in like that, and you are stopping a counter attack. So it's a frustrating one, but it's one that we've seen from Newell, in the past, and I think it's. With those two, if they're going to play this 4-2-3-1 and you're making that box with, Ohora and Ekpiteta, and that's how you protect it, then if the ball's going wide into the channels and there's a counter attack, you need you need Kwon to run and to track and to put the yards in, but also you just need to be really, really clever about the type of fouls you're maybe looking to give away in those areas. Now, I think Newell, to be fair to him, having seen what Middleton done to Miller, would Newell have caught him? Probably not. So it's maybe one of those fouls he's going, well, I'm just going to take him out here and take the booking. But then you're just, for the rest of the game, you just have to be really disciplined, which, to be fair to Newell, he was up until that second yellow.
Yeah, and any queries with the second yellow?
The only thing was, and I think David Gray mentioned it after, was I'm sure he said the fourth official gave it, which I thought was a bit odd, but and just how long it took to kind of stop the game. But I think when you see it slowed back, you can see he goes in, he does win the ball, but then his foot comes right over the top of it, and it kind of leaves a bit of a nasty one.
I suppose the key point nowadays is it doesn't matter if you win the ball or not. If you're still following through onto somebody like that, then you are leaving yourself open.
And it goes back to this, and we'll maybe get into it about David Gray and stuff later on, but Newell's like kind of got the ball in the middle of the pitch, no one around him, and he just takes a really bad touch. It's just a really bad touch that then he overruns and then he flies into that tackle. And
was that a tired touch, did you think? Because he'd been out for a few weeks, Newell, it looked, and then, but I mean, I'm just I'm speculating, but I suppose you're not going to take your captain off unless you have to. It's easy to go all hindsight and say, oh, well, he was on a booking, should he have still been on the pitch? But I don't, he's maybe tiring a little, but I don't think it would be a bit, I think disingenuous to say that, it looked as if, sometimes you can tell when a player's going to get sent off, can't you? Like, it's obvious, you can see it coming. I think it's just one mistake leads into trying to make up for that mistake as quickly as he can. And then I know we might be saying, at the end of the day, it is a booking, but there is still an element, I suppose, of misfortune about what happens with a tackle. As much as you maybe could say, well, don't make it in the first place, don't take that risk. It's kind of split-second decisions, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, it's like different, Tannadice won last week, a week before against Motherwell. That was just a sort of crazy, rash decision from quite a young player who you can see sort of as soon as he done it, realised what he had done. For Newell, he's got the experience, and, as I said, after that early booking, he pretty much towed the line really, really well for the majority of the game. And maybe it was just that getting into the last bit, and Dwight Gale, I think, alluded to it in his interview about this getting tetchy towards the final parts of games and overthinking things and complicating things and just losing that lapse in that concentration. And then unfortunately at the moment we just seem to be getting punished for all these mistakes.
And Hibs certainly were punished. So I think we've put it off long enough now. We need to get into the two Dundee United goals. So I mean this one takes it on a wee bit to when Trapanovski kind of advances towards the box. But I think one of the key things here is just about maybe 10-15 seconds before that, Hibs actually played their way out quite well. Dwight Gale carried the ball up the pitch a wee bit. He runs into a bit of a brick wall, but then Levitt plays a nice wee clip pass for Josh Campbell to try and take the ball up the line, but then he just takes this really kind of sloppy touch. Campbell doesn't it, and just it's one of those moments where you've got, if it's a guy who's just come on the park, who's still fresh legs, you're looking for him to carry that into the corner and give everybody else a breather, aren't you?
Yeah, and we were chatting off air about the substitutions, and I can kind of once Newell goes off, Kurevic and it's Kurevic and Hoylett that come off, isn't it? And for Campbell and Newell, you're leaving Gale up there. You've still got the outlet for Boyle. Gale's kind of fresh on the pitch, can make those runs in behind, carry the ball, win free kicks. I kind of understood the subs to a certain extent, and Campbell, like not long before that, when the ball's him and Boyle have the ball up in the corner and they're kind of holding off the ball and trying to win throw-ins and get a free kick and things like that. So again, like he understands, he's able to do that, and it's just that he runs and it's just, again, it's a poor touch and it's a turnover. And it proves really costly. And yeah, here actually the reason I've highlighted this is actually, Boyle gets back in and actually wins the tackle here, but it just, the ball kind of spirals up and stays in possession of Dundee United. And if you move it on the next clip, he kind of gets past Boyle. Obviously, kind of ball springs up. And it's interesting here because I've highlighted Kwon again because at this point, he's the last line of defence here. You've got Levitt inside that I think if Middleton decided to, or is it Trapanovsky on the ball? Sorry.
Yeah.
If he decides to cut in, I think Levitt's there to probably block that shot. So he's only really going to go down this line. And again, I just think Kwon's really square, really flat-footed, and just a bit, I don't know, it's a bit naive. Again, I think just in terms of recognising the danger, and obviously once it goes past, once he gets past and down into the byline, I think I've clipped it just before the final. Yeah.
Again, there's bodies there, isn't there?
There's bodies there, and I think, Iredale's, I think he has a quick glance, and I think he sees the player there, but it just, as the ball goes past Kwon and into that area, and it's getting pulled back, he's just far enough off him that once the ball breaks into the middle, and obviously, so we get into this position here. You can see Iredale, if you kind of focus in a wee bit, he's looking, he's looking at the man. He knows that's where he needs to pick up. And obviously, I think at that point, if the ball gets fired across and Bursic doesn't stick a hand out, I'd like to think we clear that. Or
with just the amount of white shirts that are there.
Aye. I mean, listen, could it hit off Iredale and go in? Knowing our luck, probably it could have done that as well. But obviously, again, you're talking Iredale's probably put himself in not a bad position here to kind of deal with the cross. And then obviously, as it gets fired in, Bursic pams it and it lands straight where you just don't want it to be, and it just, it's an easy tap in.
Yeah, is there much more Bursic can do there?
I don't know. I mean, this is the goalkeeper's
I've watched
union,
it about 10 times and I can't decide myself. So
I don't know. I think it's fired. You see keepers doing that. They react, they palm it away, and I think if he palms it away and we've still got an extra body on the pitch, is Newell in that position to welly it clear or something like that? Maybe. It's those split second decisions that are just going against us.
So that was the story of the second goal, and then I think after that there was a real foreboding about what was perhaps going to happen next, because it's really into sort of last kick of the ball territory. There was a moment just before this where it escapes me which Dundee United player it was. It might have been Stevenson who gets the ball round about the halfway line, and he passes it back to Jack Walton, the Dundee United goalkeeper. And there's around the home end, everybody's they're all up and shouting like, "What are you doing that for?" And then literally about 3 seconds later, the ball is in the net. So this is kind of how the ball comes long from the goalkeeper. Again, lots of bodies in and around, and then it's just a simple flick on, and then. I'll let you talk us through it, but there is just kind of one moment in here that proves really costly, isn't there?
Yeah, Ubo Ochima I've highlighted there in the sort of like the halo coming down over. Like, again, I don't know if I'm being super critical. Maybe folk can kind of get in touch if they do. I feel like when you've just conceded and you're going into like the last of the last minutes, that I'm just not quite sure. We've got Campbell, Kwon, Levitt, Obita all kind of nowhere near the ball really, and it's a decent ball in the back post, and Boyle, I just feel like we could have been a little bit more compact. Listen, would it have made a huge amount of difference to what follows? Probably not, but the problem I've really got with the midfielders is all through the whole goal they're just ball watching and
everybody's looking at the ball.
Everybody's looking at the ball. Even here as the first as the headers won, the two Dundee United players are running off the back of Ekpiteta and Iredale. But I just, again, and it goes back to, it's just this kind of naivety, and you're talking some of our young players, like Kwon and things like that, but it just seems there's just, and then Gail alluded to it in his interview about just people kind of leading, taking responsibility, getting people organised, and when you look at our record for conceding goals at the beginning of games and at the end of the games, it's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, it's a real problem, isn't it?
It's a huge problem. And this goal probably is a great summary of all of that, in terms of that. And if we go to the next clip, again, Bursick's quite, he's out on his 6-yard box here, which you probably don't mind for that initial ball going in. But even as that ball's travelling, there's a moment he pauses and then you just see him go. And again, like height-wise, I know Iredale's looks like he's quite comfortable about to win that. But again, I've highlighted the eventual goal scorer. If you look again, Obita, Levitt, Kwon, Campbell, all still looking at what's going on, and Ubuachima is just waltzing into that area at the edge of the box. And I even though we're down to 10 men, I just don't think you can excuse that level of defending, personally.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Bursick's doing. It's a crazy decision. You see the ball just getting, and obviously the ball, it's a decent finish.
It's a great finish, a real composure. It's only a player I've seen for the first time, but I think that was his weaker foot as well. Jim Goodwin was saying after the game, so it's a real bit of composure from the young lad. I don't know. I think for me, obviously, it's a bad mistake from Bursick. There's no getting away from that. I suppose maybe where I do have some degree of sympathy for him is maybe in trying to understand why he does that, because it seems quite inexplicable when you've got Iredale and Ekpiteta there as to why he then goes and makes that decision. And I suppose maybe one thing is it perhaps drummed into goalkeepers in these scenarios where your team's down to 10 men, there's loads of balls being launched into the box, that then there becomes a responsibility on you to go and take responsibility and be decisive and try and relieve that pressure. And is it maybe just an over-eagerness on his part to try and do that, to try and take that responsibility when, part of good decision-making is sometimes when not to make a decision, if that makes sense, to not go, to know when to stay and when to go.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, if you look at the first goal that we lose, I'm not saying he could have stuck a leg out and, it was a great ball from Middleton into Dalby, but there's that moment, the disallowed goal they have in the second half, again, it's a cross that it's a really good delivery, but again, he stays on his line. Dalby, I think it's in between O'Hora and Obita and scores again. Actually, I'm sure he has another one before this where he clatters into the back of Iredale as well. So it's an interesting kind of thing for him to, now that there's 3 centre halves there. I would have thought that would make him feel a bit more comfortable to stay and do what he's doing, but actually it seems to have almost had the opposite effect, and he's then feeling like he needs to come out and punch and be a bit more dominant. And then obviously, and then I think obviously after he palmed the second goal and obviously conceded there, he's maybe just that eagerness to go, I'm going to want to get one of those big punches 20, 30 yards away for goal, get the team up, get the draw, whatever. So you do feel for him, in that situation, because it's I haven't seen him really come out for too many things. He does come out and punch a lot when he does come out. I don't think I've seen him come out and really take a cross like that, but he's a young goalkeeper, and exactly. I'm sure that'll eat away at him, that error there.
I know he's not going to need to be told, really, is he? It's just why, I'm not excusing. Obviously, you can't excuse the mistake, but you can at least try and understand why a player has made a decision in a certain moment. And I do think it's maybe just an over eagerness to try and take responsibility that's come back to bite him there. I think just in terms of what you were.
Sorry, just to say as well, though, even on that, it's that thing about, yes, he's made the error there, but again, if the midfield, if we're more compact there and we're in bodies in front of the ball, everyone's probably seen the clip at the end of the Aberdeen Celtic game where Aberdeen guys are all in the box, every player throwing their bodies around and stuff. And if you look at that, the difference is stark.
Me and Patrick actually had a discussion about this earlier when I was writing the piece about the final 15 minutes, and I suppose it's maybe a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario. The mistake from Bursick is the costly moment, but you do. I think I see what you're saying there in terms of having, a few players who are kind of in what you'd maybe sort of call nothing positions. Really, they're not picking anybody up necessarily, and they're not doing anything to sort of cover dangerous spaces. So I suppose the crux of it, I suppose, if Iredale gets to make that header cleanly, then the entire situation doesn't arise. But then if you've got maybe guys, slightly out of position when mistakes do happen, then that's how these errors are being so maximised and so brutally punished, doesn't it? It's kind of one thing leading into another.
When you look at the players there again, like you've got what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players back. And obviously, leaving Gale up front, but they're all back, but just not in a good shape or a good setup, and that's where I don't, unless and when David Gray, I'm sure being a defender and things like that, and it's something I'm sure he's tearing his hair out, but whatever's going on, it's not working, because I don't see, even at any level, when you've just conceded in the 93rd minute, for somebody not to step up and drag everybody back in and get them into shape and get everybody together. I can't really understand.
It was a wee bit disorganised, and I suppose you are then asking for trouble. I suppose we were going to try and get to some questions at the end today, but I'm aware that we do need to let Craig go. He's got places to be, people to see. So I think what we might do then is just kind of hold on to those, and we'll maybe address them later in the week, because we'll be back to preview the Edinburgh derby. But just a thanks to Ryan Laurie, who says that visuals are a great addition. Do appreciate that, Ryan. We are trying to put just a bit more meat on the bones of these tactical discussions, so hopefully folks have found that a useful addition at trying to flesh out a wee bit more. We had Paul Herring on last week, and he's just reminding us that he remember last week I stated that he'd settle for 6th. Hibs are bottom of the league now, so I suppose that statement, I suppose you can understand where he was coming from there. But I mean, it's still early days. I know the signs are not great with this team at the moment. There's a lot of things that are going wrong that are setting alarm bells ringing, but there is still time for it to turn. And I suppose with Edinburgh derby coming up on Sunday, there's no better time to start doing that. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there for today, folks. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Craig, as always, for great insight on where it all went wrong. If you're watching us on YouTube and you like what you see, please do consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, because we'll bring you more and more of these more in-depth videos as we go along. And then, as I said, we've got an accompanying piece for today's discussion on the Hibs Observer website. Just kind of focusing on the last 15 minutes from Joe Newell's red card through to the winning goal, and just kind of breaking down what happened there, where it went wrong. If you don't subscribe to the Hibs Observer, you can take out a subscription for just £4 at the moment, and that gets you access to all our Hibs content. But as I said, I'm going to leave it there just now. Thank you all very, very much for joining us, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Cheers.
Thank you.